Hi, everyone. Welcome to the New Indian Express video series. I'm your host, Noor Anand Chawla. And today I'm in conversation with Uzair Merchant, all the way from Vancouver, Canada. And we're going to be speaking about his, really popular music video, Stardust, which has become the world's first music video to be sold as an NFT, which I think is extremely cool. But before we begin, let me introduce Uzair to you. Born in India and raised in Dubai, Uzair Merchant is a multiple award-winning filmmaker and founder of Be Creative Productions, based out of Dubai and Vancouver. With over a decade in the film business, Merchant has worked on titles ranging from Deadpool to Star Trek Beyond, Fast and Furious 7, and even Skyfall. He's also completed work for the BBC, Sesame Street, and commercials for Cadillac and McDonald's. His short film, Chasing Lines, has won 11 international awards, and he has secured 4 international screenplay awards for his TV series, Black Rose. Merchant recently served as a production designer for The Misfits and is working in the art department for the upcoming series, Superman and Lois. Today, however, we're here to speak about his latest achievement, as I mentioned to you, the song Stardust, which he has directed and which has become the world's first music video to be traded as an NFT. Now, this unique song was made as soundtrack for the TV show Black Rose, which means those who own its NFT automatically become producers of the show. Quite a feat if you ask me. So without further ado, let's welcome Uzair. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thank you so much, Noor. First of all, thank you for the amazing article that you've already been kind enough to write about. But yeah, it's been great, and I'm happy to be here. I look forward to this conversation. It's going to be fun.
So before we speak about Stardust, let's talk about your connection with India. I believe you grew up here. So when did you move? Where did you live? Which part of the country? How often do you return?
I am Indian. I still am Indian. I always say that, that's my root, but I don't consider myself a citizen of India. I consider myself a citizen of the world. So I hold Indian roots, but I'm a product of the world, and that's just, that's how life turned out to be. So I was born in India in Bangalore. I didn't grow up there. I grew up in Dubai.
Okay.
So I was in Dubai for pretty much my entire childhood. I went out university in the UK, so I lived there for a while, about 5, 6 years. And then I was back in Dubai, and then in New York, and then in Toronto, and now Vancouver's home. So therefore I said product of the world. So yes, I've held Indian roots throughout, but what I've done is somehow always managed to tie back those roots to creative roots. So even while I was in the UK, I wrote my dissertation actually, which is sitting right there in the back. It's called Social Realism on Indian Cinema. And that was published while I was in the UK. And so I was always trying to tie back to what is it about Indian cinema that the other side of the world can't get? And why is it that every time you watch an Indian film, everyone cries? But every time you watch, a film from anywhere else in the world, people come out more wowed. It always amazed me. I was like, what is this power they have to get everyone to cry on command? Like this is a superpower, right? So yeah, I was always intrigued, and social realism was that idea. And funny enough, currently what I'm doing as well, building the next phase of creativity with the NFT and the metaverse phase, I'm actually going back to the same roots, which is, hey, why did this begin in the first place? Why was Bollywood born in the first place? Right? It was escapism, right? Escapism from reality gave you the birth of dance and let's go away. And that's kind of what this whole metaverse NFT thing is too, right? You had this era of controlling society wherein artists are not looked at as artists, but rather commodities, right? And that had to, blow up at some point. Uh, I've been looking at that for 13 years, Noor.
Oh,
Believe
really?
it or not. 13
Well,
years,
well
yeah.
before they actually became concepts that we speak about.
Oh, no, absolutely. I was VR game testing in the late 90s in Dubai. There were
Mhm.
articles about VR game testing. I was 8 and 9 years old. So I was in that world like way before, most people understood that, hey, that's the future of experience. Because think about it. I've said this in a few interviews before as well, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, not human beings having a spiritual experience. That means we're currently living in a simulated matrix. We're already in a metaverse of a sort, right? Your soul got put in, here you are, which means we are building our extension of that. It's kind of the same thing. It's funny, but we're always in that circle.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, I've never thought of it like that, but I'm certainly going to digest that.
For
Okay,
sure.
so I believe you're involved with Create Labs. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm one of the founders of Create Labs. So I began this process of Create Labs purely on my personal journey.
Mhm.
Because what does it take for an artist to do what I do? It's almost impossible in most scenarios. I grew up in the middle of the desert, right? Now Dubai is what it is. Now there's exposure. There wasn't any back in the day, right? So for me, music that time was an Eminem cassette, you're right. And I would sit down and then break out lyrics to see from the little book that came in. And that was exposure. That was like going to the library for me, because it was like you didn't get to see, because there was no internet, what
Right.
happened around the other side of the world with, now you have Gully Boy. So you know what happened in India, right?
Mhm.
But we didn't that time. No one knew what
Right.
Compton was or what NWA was or what, the reality of it was. So for me, that exploration was always very, very cool. Being able to, hey, let's go dive in this world and understand why artists do what they do. So Create Labs was that process. For me, I'm like, it took me so long to actually find a process. What if there's the next Harry Potter or the next Lord of the Rings sitting with a kid from Syria or Bangladesh or India in the middle of the streets? Does
Yeah.
he or she have to then go and wait in a 10 million line of Amazon Prime and Netflix to then see what might never be the light of day of something? And at
Mhm.
that point, they've had to give the rights away to someone who are now controlling how their art is now looked at. For me, it just never adds up properly. So I'm like, let's go and redo this. Let's go publish scripts. And then artists know straight away what the feedback is. So two things happen. They're protected with copyright.
Mhm.
Then you're already a published artist, which means an artist needs feedback.
Mhm.
No, most artists that I know, if you told them, hey, here's 10 million, what are you going to do? Usually they're going to go continue doing what they're doing, which is
Yeah,
keep creating, right?
that's
Nothing changed for them. They're going to wake up the next morning and just keep creating. And so I'm like, well, people want to cycle as artists. People from the business aspect don't get that. They're looking for an exit. Artists don't want an exit. This was our exit. Our exit of this world was art. You see,
right.
we didn't come here to clock out again. We came here to remain here. So Create Labs is that. It's that lab where artists can come to clock out, and we try to build a process to help them along the way. So we have a couple of ties with certain lawyers. So we've got a publisher, we've got designers in house. Usually it's to help them. We don't take rights at all from artists. Um, we,
Wonderful.
we let them we let them own 100% of their rights. We try to then take it to sell once their script is published, and if it's done a certain amount of sales,
Mhm.
then we put onto a slate that we present to a certain board and
Okay.
say, hey, here are certain projects. Which one can we take into production if possible, right? And funny enough, I use my own project as the first guinea pig, and that's where we're at with Stardust and Black Rose. So we published it. The book is available online with Black Rose
Oh,
on Amazon and
wonderful.
everywhere. Yeah, so we published it. I went out and made the soundtrack, and now we're releasing it as an NFT in a whole new business model. It's proof of concept of the cycle.
Wonderful. I mean, I didn't realize that you actually don many creative hats apart from what I have known of. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
I'm an artist just by soul. So it's like I don't like to tick boxes of what I do and where I do, because just because someone needs 3 years to learn something to then be called that title, I don't consider myself like that, because usually I can learn it in 6 months if someone took 3 years, because it's the way of approaching it,
Right.
right? Now, just because I do it in 6 months, that doesn't mean I'm not going to be able to do that skill, right?
Yeah.
Because think about it, everyone uses the same software,
Yes, that's true.
but what you produce on that software. So usually if someone's like, hey, I got a degree in this, same software, what are you
Yeah.
going to output on that software in the time that we need to output, right?
Yeah. That's where your creative cap gives you an edge over everybody else.
Yeah, I think it's understanding of this world more than anything, Noor. I think people don't step back,
Mhm.
and I get that from different people, architects, doctors, CEOs. I've had conversations from Fortune 500 business people to people off the street.
Mhm.
And usually it's the same questions like, why do you choose to do that? Or why do you think like that? I'm like, have you ever stopped to wonder how what around you functions the way it does? Because you very soon realize that there is a pattern and you're automatically part of it. We
Interesting.
usually want to fight that pattern, right? That's what I call human inability to understand that we're no value, we're zero value, actually. We're very fragile beings and we think we're great, but we're not. So if you look around, universe actually has a great pattern. It
Mhm.
exists. People just don't look.
Yeah, that's true. That's very
Yeah,
true. Okay, so let's come to Stardust now. Uh,
sure.
who came up with it? Was it your idea? How did you assemble the team that made the music video eventually? Let us know about the entire procedure. We'd love to know.
Stardust. So Stardust, the backstory of it. I started writing Black Rose while I was in hospital through COVID when my dad was completely, pretty much incapacitated because of cardiac arrest. So I
Oh.
was about 8 months in Bangalore actually, and through the lockdowns and all of that, and what do I do? Interpret the world the way I do. So I go back and I start writing. So I was sitting there next to him writing and went out and designed the show and all of that. When I came back to Vancouver, I went through the process of being next to him and then being away from him. But I started to see his condition change. And here I see this person for almost 15 months in between life and death. And then I saw my mom on the other side, literally having unconditional faith uh, that, no, this is not. And then I go back to start research because I've researched over years the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran. And so I went back for the fourth time to break down the Quran. And one of the things I read was, we come from dust and dust is where we go to. And it's funny because I saw two extreme spectrums, one that could make contact with this world, which was my mom, one that couldn't, which was my dad. Yet they somehow both had the same prolific effect of people around them. Like, so what really matters then? Consciousness. Beyond that, nothing. And so Stardust was that. It was like, hey, if this needs to be the first track of what happens and where, I'm going to find a way to link it. So Stardust is two things. It's my personal journey through it, but it's also the character's journey of Rose, the character who loses someone and has to find how she becomes her. So through the songs, which I'm trying to aid in the album, I'm telling almost a comic style backstory of what the TV show is going to be like in some subtle way, leaving little clues and trails. So that's Stardust. That was the concept.
And what about the singers? And four of them, I guess four of you, because you were part of them. Like, how did you pick them, and how did it all come together?
Uh, Universal pattern. I'm not kidding. We started out. So Alex, who made the first beat in Dubai, I know him from before because he interned with me.
Mhm.
Salim, who is, he belongs to a group called Desert Heat, which was the first ever Arab Emirati hip hop group from Dubai. Funny enough, 11 years ago when I started out, or 12 years ago in Dubai, I worked on a documentary as a production assistant, and it was with Salim, and it was we were basically shooting a documentary about Salim and his brother. And I was super amazed by his art, very inspiring, because here were these two brothers literally who went through the same process that I also went through, because they were taking inspiration from Nas and all these people coming out from the east and west coast, but they were rapping about Dubai and the culture and Karama and all these places that we knew. And I was like, hey, this is cool. They're not talking about guns and who they killed, but they're actually using their story and talking about their stuff. So I was really, really inspired. I attempted to do something like this 10 years ago, mixing British and Indian art. I just didn't know how to release it that time because NFTs
Oh,
didn't exist,
yeah.
right? So when we did it this time, Arrow, who's one of our engineers who's here and
Mm.
the lead singer, we started working together because Genevieve, who's our cast, and
Mhm.
him are friends. And Genevieve and I worked on my last film together. She was the cast in my last film. So she helped us connect. And Sean and I, we connected through Instagram, and we started recording and doing all this stuff. And I sat back one day and I looked at Aaron and I was like, "Nah, we're missing soul in this track. Like, there's no soul right now." So I reached out to Salim and I was like, "Hey, bro, okay, listen, we need to do this in Arabic. We need to do this." And so the part he talks about is actually about the soul. So he's literally in Arabic, he's rapping about, the moment of atonement, the moment of loss. And I wanted that in Arabic because the inspiration for me was the Quran, and it came in Arabic. And I was like, there's no better way to interpret it in its original language, because that's just what language is.
Yeah.
And so that's how it happened. Through the pandemic, got these people together, and I was like, hey guys, let's go create something. And everyone's been so cool along the way. And I'm telling you, it's like when you get cool creative people in a room together that has no egos, that just literally want to do hey, let's go create something, you can really have some fun.
Yeah, I think that's been one, sort of benefit of the pandemic. It sort of brought so many people who may not have had the opportunity to work together because they've been in different parts of the world. Now they can do it. So
That's right. And again, it's the same thing that we just spoke about, patterns, right?
yeah.
People didn't realize, look, 200 years back, or when you look at old dynasties and civilizations, there was no communication, yet there's proving patterns that, like I said, people don't understand, right? The pyramids of Giza and the moon temple in Mexico are in the same latitude,
Mhm.
right? Like, how many people have questioned the fact that without internet and telephone, how on earth did someone place two pyramids the same size and the same latitude,
True.
right? So
Um,
clearly, patterns of how we create exist. People just don't go and look for it.
that's really interesting. Okay.
It's the way it is.
Absolutely. So now let's talk about the NFT aspect. I mean, you've already touched on the fact that you've been, involved or interested in this sphere. So how did you decide to partner with FinHaven particularly? How did that whole thing come about? And how has the response been so far? I'd love to know.
Yeah, it's been really cool. So the response for the track has been amazing. Everyone's loved the fact that it's different, and that's what it's meant to be. So the first person we got on board in terms of a big collaborator was James Bamford, who's our director as well for Black Rose. He's done shows like he was the director and supervising producer for Arrow and really cool things. So him and I went through this process of, okay, we want to take it in these realms and do these things. And funny enough, the CEO of FinHaven, GH, who's also a creative genius in his way from capital markets, by the way. And him and I met in the sauna. No jokes. I was talking to another person who turned out to be the producer of Kung Fu Hustle, true story, Jeff Lau. I
Wow.
had no idea. We're talking, and then he tells me about who he is, and I'm really amazed. I'm like, dude, I love Kung Fu Hustle. Like, you're a legendary filmmaker. So I started telling him about things, and we're in the dressing room, and behind, he turns around and he goes, "Did you say you're doing stuff with NFTs and film?" It's like, "Yeah, I've just done 2 talks, and we're currently just minted our first piece, and this is what we're doing." And he's like, "Hey, we should meet up. We're trying to do the same thing, but from a blockchain perspective." I'm like, "Awesome." And we met, we spoke, and almost, I think, 2 weeks later, he was holding a conference in Vancouver for about 17 private equity firms on investments, on new investments. And he's like, "Hey, Uzi, do you wanna present?" And I was shooting every day on Superman and Lois, so we're doing 14-hour days. And I'm like, "Yeah, I've waited for 13 years for people to get this. Let's roll it out." And so we did. The response was awesome. And now here we are. We're actually in the final stages of the commission process with the SEC in Canada, the Securities Commission. And hopefully when we get this thing, finally done in the next 20, 30 days, it will create a whole new cycle for artists.
I'm sure.
When what we've done is reimagine the way art and what it portrays, right? When every artist should have a CEO, not work for one.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference, because that allows artists to create with freedom. And that's funny, like I said, so DH coming from the capital market side, he understood that. So that's why we kind of connected, maybe same star sign. And he was like, hey, don't you guys just want to do what you guys do? I'm like, yeah, why do you think I've been trying to do this for so long? It's artists need to keep creating a cycle. So with Stardust, for example, the NFT offering is a fractional security. So what we're doing is we're raising money towards the TV show, but part of it goes to the artist now. Part of it, we go and do the next track. Part of it goes to the entire merchandise that's going to now release. So not only investors, but the artists too, and everyone involved, cast and crew, own a piece of everything, not just a video or a song. Nope, the entire thing. So we plan to do 8 songs. Each one raises money for the show, but also becomes the owner of the show. And so 8 songs become investors in the show, and eventually the show will just buy out the songs.
That is so cool.
Right?
Yeah.
And eventually, that's what most artists need to think of. Hey, how do I create my own cycle around me? You want to know the funny part about that? It's the Indian lifestyle that actually got me to think of that.
How come?
If you think about business and the way India runs and operates business, it's amazed me. Till today, I go back and friends of mine in Bombay, they sit down, they have to explain it to me because I'm very fascinated. You see a guy off the street and suddenly he's an acclaimed businessman by only selling to his street. If someone sold, right, say toothpaste, buys it for 1 rupee and sells it for 1 rupee more, there's 20,000 people just in his district that he's generating on 1 rupee, 20 grand off. MBAs are getting that, right? Someone's gone to university and getting that. What's the idea there? It's 2 things. 1, what do people need? And can I give them access to it?
Yeah.
And he's not got an online store, Instagram store, a business partner, and marketing plans and all of that. He's still generating. Yet you come here and try to do $20,000 of business. You need certifications, paperwork, etc., etc., etc. There's so much red tape. You'll spend a year getting to 0.
Yeah.
And then you'll spend the next year maybe getting to the 20,000. Whereas the other guy, toothpaste, 1 rupee, that's all he needs. And I like that. I like the simplicity of access to people.
I would have never compared Indian business practices to the world of NFT, but I think that's a very interesting example. So,
right? But it is because, like I said, the world has patterns and people don't observe it.
True. And you've given me plenty of examples actually in this talk. So that's really interesting.
Right. And that's all I ask people to do is don't think out of the box, just think or change the shape, right? Think out of a circle, out of a triangle, out of a trapezium or whatever you want. Just change the shape.
Oh, yeah, actually, that's right. So actually tell us about Black Rose. When is it releasing and where will we be able to see it when it's out?
We're going to go into pre-production hopefully this summer. We're currently getting all of this stuff together, and it's going to be released in a very different format. So I won't release anything about that yet. But
Okay.
I wanna put it out in a way that yes, it's going to be interesting. I want to make it interesting for the way people approach. People's attention span nowadays has gone all the way down to about less than 10 seconds.
I know.
Right? Exactly. And so I'm like, why can't people pay more attention? Why can't you go watch a 4-hour film like King Kong in the cinema anymore? No one has the patience for that, right? So I'm trying to build a format that hopefully for the newer generation as well, can it be interesting, wherein we can not only give them incentives, but make them part of it. So what I will tell you is Black Doors is going to be an interactive film and TV show. So people are going to have access to controlling the story.
Oh, that sounds very interesting. I think we'll have to reconvene to discuss it closer to release date.
Right, exactly. And that's the future of, I think, where filmmaking is going to eventually end up at.
Yeah, okay.
So it's going to be fun.
Exciting.
Yeah, but the book's out. So this, you can read what we call the release script. And so it's released as a script because, like I said, I see patterns. So I've done this before. And so the last short film I did was Chasing Lines with Genevieve, the same actress is in this. And that was for me a trial, right? So that time I was playing. I finished Deadpool, and I remember having a conversation with someone who was like, "Oh yeah, it's so easy for you to get budget, and you guys can do big stuff, and yada yada yada." And I'm like, "That's really unfair for you to say, because the things that we do to actually get to that point of getting a budget, no one ever sees that." So it was almost like this thing I wanted to set straight for the record. I was like, "You don't need nothing to go make art." So I took my iPhone SE, which was the crappy iPhone, and handheld, picked up two actors, shot everything on that iPhone SE handheld, no studio, edited everything on my laptop, the audio as well. And we went to 23 festivals, by the way, around the world. It's on Amazon Prime. It got picked up by Sophie TV, available on, I think, almost 80 million Samsung TV platforms, um, all on that iPhone, right? And that time I was like, I was just having fun. Like, I was just trying to make a little point going, hey, you can go create art. But then I quickly realized, I'm like, wait, we can do so much more with this. So this time I'm like, okay, I want to push the boundaries a little bit. So we got a cinematic lens, and we actually pushed the boundary. Anyone who's seen the preview or who's seen the test video has been like, I don't believe this was shot on the iPhone. I was like, and again, I've not even pushed it 100%. This is like, I would say 40% of what we pushed it at, because this was again done small, internal, fully self-funded, right? And again, I did it handheld, but this time we pushed it where it was not just me. So my good friend, and who also works with us, Zubair, he's in Dubai. And so I managed to rig for him the same settings with the app, with the same details for us to control everything, and then gave him previous animation that I just did of camera angles and shots. And then he just literally replicated it, showed me on Zoom and WhatsApp, and we were filming in 2 countries on the iPhone.
That's amazing. Well,
Right?
you really like just enlarge the boundaries of what we have creatively thought possible so far in so many different ways with just this
That
one
was the
project.
idea.
Yeah.
That's the lab, and that's the idea. Another cool thing that happened, and I only realized after we finished shooting that day. So we were shooting this building called Marine Building. Funny enough, Finn Haven's office is there. I didn't know that time that
Oh,
we were shooting. We
okay.
shot in the same building that is their office. But it's a beautiful building in Vancouver. It's one of the heritage buildings. So it's from the Gothic times. So you've
Mm.
had films like X-Men, Superman, everyone shoot here.
Okay.
True story. We got in, security looked at me and he goes, "Hey, where's your trucks and everything?" And I was like, "No trucks." He goes, "Where are you guys gonna plug in and do all of that?" It's like, "Nothing, it's all here." And he's like, "What?" He just, didn't pay attention. So we did the first few shots, and then I went to him. His name's Pedro. I was like, "Hey, Pedro, check this out. Do you think like we can go up the balcony?" He was so amazed. He goes, "Do you need an extra? Do you want me to get in?" He opened up the elevators and he got us to shoot from everywhere, right? When we finished, I looked at the crew and I was like, does everyone just realize what we did? We came into a building where they've had hundreds of crew before.
Yeah.
We just shot for 5 hours with a dog. Crew didn't plug in a single cable into the building, not even for charge. One battery charge, everything was backed up on the cloud. I was formatting live and doing sound cuts live on the iPhone and
That's
exporting.
amazing. Yeah.
And everything was done in 5 hours, completely handheld, just on the iPhone. No
Wow.
plugs, no lights, no external, nothing.
That's actually a game changer for the entire industry.
Right? And it's like, can you think about how many things and places you can get that phone into that you would need a big, crew and etc. Like for us, I was pretty shocked when we did it, because the next morning I was back on Superman where we have, 400 people, right? We're doing the same stuff. And I'm like, that shot, I could totally do that. If I had two more
Wow.
people yesterday with a green screen, we could, because I know exactly how to rig it then on the software. We can do that. We don't need 400 people for that.
Oh my
So I'm like, hey, we can go do this without this system again, right? And that's what I'm trying to do, is bring that social realism mindset to this
God.
side of the world and bring the technical boundary pushing to that side of the world, hopefully. Because if that reaches there, they already produce 5 times more films than this side of the world. That side of the world also has way more population with ability of people to push.
Yeah, That's
So
interesting. And
yeah,
hopefully you will succeed in your
yeah,
endeavors.
I think it's just a matter of I don't understand that word usually, succeed, because I'm like, it doesn't exist
Okay, and then we
in
can
my
change
world.
it to have a positive result.
There we
Of
go. Thank you.
that.
There we go. Because the idea is we got to keep doing it, right? The cycle is you keep doing it. We don't know. Maybe 10 years from now, we'll find that one person that changed the next 20 years, like Harry Potter did. Who knows,
Yeah.
right? But the idea is I want to build the lab so that beyond me, because everyone has their time in this world, a space when you think of in X-Men, Xavier's School for the Gifted. Yeah, that's the idea. It's like,
Great
hey,
lab.
let's go create a safe haven where an artist can come and be like, from different parts of the world, hey, let's go and I'll find someone from Italy and Spain or Brazil that I'll get a different mindset in this lab that I can collaborate with.
Very exciting. And we have Professor X sitting with us today. Our
I like
professor
it.
there.
That's
All
cool. That's
right.
cool.
So, like, what are you working on next? And we will end with this one.
I'm always doing a bunch of stuff. So currently Black Rose and Stardust has taken up a lot of time because I'm also writing, but we're developing two more scripts. One's actually an Indian story. It's a true story that we have rights to about an Indian army officer who walked from a prison of war camp from Malaysia to India, escaping prison of war 3 times, and how he walked. So I'm trying to develop a story on that based of that book. And we've got a few other projects with James Bamford that we're currently kicking up. So currently, I'm just trying to see how we can get artists to keep working, whereas for us to go into production.
Great. So lots of new and exciting things to look forward to. And of course, Black Rose being right on top of it all. So thank
Yes, and
you.
we have our new NFT marketplace coming in, which is going to be fun too. We'll speak about that at some time in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Looking forward to it.
Thank you
Great.
so
Thank
much, Nora. I
you.
really appreciate this.
Yeah, and thank you for joining me. I know it's very early in the morning for you, and
No, that's
but
okay.
it was a really interesting, insightful chat. And I want to thank all our viewers too for tuning in.